You envision wealth every single day. You wake up early. You repeat affirmations. You practice autosuggestion before bed. You do everything Napoleon Hill taught in Think and Grow Rich. Yet, your bank account hasn't changed, and you believe the problem is a lack of faith, when in reality, the issue lies in a chapter you probably skipped. Hill followed 507 men who applied the 13 principles between 1908 and 1936. He recorded every routine, every affirmation, every visualization, and when he published the results, 83% still had no real wealth to show for it. He documented why in Chapter 6, but it's the chapter fewest people ever finish reading. Napoleon Hill was tasked by Andrew Carnegie in 1908. Carnegie was 73 years old and commanded more wealth than most nations at the time. He summoned Hill for an interview in Pittsburgh that was supposed to last 15 minutes. It stretched into 3 days. By the end of the third day, Carnegie made an offer. Hill would have unrestricted access to 500 of America's wealthiest men for 20 years. No pay. No guarantees, only the promise that if Hill documented every principle, every mistake, every decision that separated true wealth from mental illusion, he would hold in his hands the formula no one had ever recorded before. Hill accepted. He spent the next 2 decades inside factories, offices, and boardrooms. He interviewed Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, and Charles M. Schwab. He documented everything. He published Think and Grow Rich in 1937, outlining the 13 principles everyone knows today. But there's a catch. The book is 272 pages long. 83% of readers don't make it past page 140, and it's precisely there, in the chapter almost no one finishes, that Hill recorded the principle explaining why most visualize but never build. Chapter 6. Organized Plans. Hill kicks off with a case everyone knows, Edwin Barnes, the man who envisioned working with Thomas Edison and made it happen, but the version circulating in the self-help market. That's the edited version, the comfortable one, the one that lets you believe all it took was intense visualization and the universe conspired. But Hill documented something different. Edwin Barnes was 28 years old in 1905. He worked as a railroad laborer in Canton, Ohio. He earned $19 a week. He lived in a rented room he shared with another man, and one night, he read about Edison in the newspapers. He decided he was going to work with him, not for him, with him as a partner. So far, it sounds like the classic motivational story: visualization, burning desire, applied faith. The problem is, most people stop reading there, because what comes next isn't comfortable. Barnes didn't stay in Canton visualizing until he felt ready. He did something Hill recorded with surgical precision, but which the self-help market deliberately ignores. Barnes quit his job the very next day. Without having another job lined up, without any savings, he bought a one-way train ticket to West Orange, New Jersey, where Edison's laboratory was located. A one-way ticket. No money for a return. Hill writes this verbatim on page 143 of the original edition. He burned all his bridges behind him. Barnes. When Barnes arrived at Edison's laboratory, he had nowhere to sleep that night. He had no contacts in New Jersey. He had no letter of recommendation. He had no resume to justify his presence there. And Edison refused to see him. And here's what no one tells you. Barnes felt fear. Hill documents this. Barnes spent the first night sitting on a park bench 3 blocks from the laboratory, cold, hungry, completely alone. And the only thing stopping him from returning to Ohio was the fact that he had no money for the return ticket. He had created irreversibility. Barnes's visualization didn't move him. The fear of sleeping on the street is what moved him. The next day, he returned to the laboratory. He asked to speak with Edison's assistant. He offered to work for free, any task, sweeping the floor, carrying equipment, whatever was needed, but inside that laboratory. The assistant let him in, not out of pity, but because Barnes had something most candidates didn't. He could no longer go back, and that changed everything. Hill spends 3 pages detailing what happened over the next 5 years. Barnes worked without pay for the first 8 months. He slept in abandoned warehouses. He ate what other employees left behind. And Edison ignored him the entire time. Until one day, in 1910, Edison needed someone to sell a new machine, the Edison dictaphone. No one wanted the project. It was risky. It could fail. It could tarnish the reputation of whoever took it on. Barnes volunteered, not because he visualized success, but because it was the only door open, and he had already burned all the others 5 years prior. Hill records that Barnes sold over $3 million worth of dictaphones in the following 2 years. He became Edison's partner in the office equipment division. He died a millionaire in 1951, but what Hill writes immediately after, on page 146, is what shatters popular belief. Barnes's visualization would not have generated wealth if he had remained in Ohio waiting to feel ready. Burning desire does not move mountains. It moves the man, but only when he removes the possibility of retreating. Hill calls this the principle of the burn decision, and he repeats this in at least 4 documented cases throughout the book. Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Andrew Carnegie, Charles M. Schwab, all of them created physical irreversibility before faith began to operate. But the self-help market doesn't quote that part, because that part demands something. Visualization doesn't. It demands that you destroy Plan B before Plan A is guaranteed. And that terrifies most people. So they visualize, they affirm, they practice autosuggestion every morning, and they believe they are applying Hill. But Hill documented something else. He documented that faith only becomes operational when you create an external situation that doesn't allow you to fail without devastating consequences. Barnes didn't have faith when he bought that one-way ticket. He had fear. Faith came later, when he realized he could no longer go back, and the only way out was to move forward until it worked. Say this out loud. Faith doesn't move me as long as I have somewhere to go back to. What you just heard completely changes how we understand Napoleon Hill. And if that's resonating with you, I need to tell you something. Because Hill himself used to say, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's why I built Rich Mind, a free community for those who take these principles seriously. Inside, you'll find the 17 principles, daily verses, a 21-day mind reprogramming planner, a summary library, and a vibrant community where people from all over the world share ideas every single day. The link is in the pinned comment. Join today, because those who wait for the perfect moment never start. Gabriele Oettingen spent 23 years in psychology labs between Berlin and New York. She published her findings in 2011. The study's title was too technical to go viral, but what she discovered explains why you visualize wealth and still stay broke. She took 283 university students. She divided them into 2 groups. She asked everyone to visualize the future they wanted, a job, acceptance, success. The first group only visualized. The second group visualized and then wrote down the concrete obstacles they would face and the physical actions needed to overcome each one. 4 months later, Oettingen measured the results. The group that only visualized had lower blood pressure during the experiment. They felt more relaxed, more confident, more motivated for 72 hours. After that, their action rate dropped 63%. Most of them stopped trying. When Oettingen asked why, the answer was always the same. I already felt good. It felt like I had already achieved it. The brain doesn't distinguish real reward from imagined reward clearly enough. When you visualize wealth without creating a verifiable external commitment, your dopamine system interprets the visualization as an anticipated victory. It releases the feeling of accomplishment. And when the feeling of accomplishment arrives before the action, the urgency to act disappears. You've already received the prize. The brain relaxes. The internal pressure that would push you forward, that pressure that comes from the discomfort of not yet having what you want, that pressure dissolves. Oettingen called this the positive fantasy problem. Napoleon Hill called it something else in 1937. He called it a dreamer without a definite plan. Hill didn't have functional magnetic resonance imaging. He couldn't measure dopamine. But he had something Oettingen took 2 decades to achieve. He had direct access to 507 men who applied faith, burning desire, autosuggestion and visualization, and failed. And Hill did the only thing that matters when you want to understand failure. He asked why. The answer is in chapter 6, page 102 of the original 1937 edition. Hill writes, "The dreamer who merely dreams has no power. The dreamer who acts transforms thought into physical reality." It sounds like motivation. It's not. It's a surgical diagnosis of an implementation error that 83% of the book's readers still make today. Hill documented that the men who failed had something in common. They all visualized, they all believed, they all repeated daily affirmations. But none of them had created physical irreversibility in the first 90 days. None had signed a contract they couldn't break. None had quit their job. None had sold their house. None had made a verifiable public bet. And without irreversibility, faith becomes mental entertainment. You feel good for 300 hours. Then you return to your previous state. And when you return, you don't understand why, because you did everything the book told you to do. You visualized, you believed, you repeated, but you skipped the part Hill put in the chapter fewer people read. Henry Ford knew this. In 1903, Ford had a functional prototype of the Model A. He had investors. He had a rented factory in Detroit, but he didn't have an assembly line. He didn't have a scaled production process. He couldn't deliver 1,000 cars, which was the number investors demanded to consider the business viable. And Ford did something that seems crazy to those who don't understand the principle. He signed a contract to supply 1,000 cars before he knew how he was going to manufacture them. The contract had a penalty for delay. It had a delivery deadline. It had a financial penalty that would destroy the company if he failed. Ford created intentional external pressure. He locked the exit door, and it was this pressure, not faith, not visualization, that forced the solution that a relaxed mind would never deliver. 4 months later, Ford invented the assembly line. He didn't invent it because he visualized. He invented it because he had no choice. This is what Hill called burning the ships. It's what Oettingen called mental contrasting with intention implementation. It's what neuroscience calls creating urgency through verifiable public commitment. And it's exactly what's missing from your autosuggestion routine. You visualize wealth, but you haven't sold your car to invest in the business. You repeat affirmations, but you haven't quit the job you hate. You believe you will succeed, but you still have a fallback if things go wrong. And as long as you have a fallback, faith doesn't have the strength to move you, because faith without risk is just positive thinking. And positive thinking without irreversible action is what Oettingen proved doesn't work, and what Hill documented 83% of the time in 1937. Say this out loud. I visualize because I want to, but I only build when I have nowhere to run. So now you understand the mechanism. Visualization without irreversibility is just a comforting fantasy, and I've put together a tool to help you break free from that. The Mental Reprogramming Planner is a 21-day system rooted in neuroscience and Hill's principles, designed to eliminate procrastination and reprogram your mind for genuine discipline. It's not about motivation, it's about method. The link is in the pinned comment of this video. Charles Schwab was 29 years old when Carnegie appointed him president of the Carnegie Steel Company in 1897. He wasn't the oldest, he wasn't the most experienced, he wasn't the most brilliant engineer in the company. But Carnegie chose Schwab because he saw something no other candidate had demonstrated. And Hill spent 6 weeks inside the factory in 1922 reconstructing exactly what Carnegie saw that day. Schwab was sitting in the Homestead plant's boardroom when Carnegie walked in unannounced. Production had been stalled for 17 days. The furnaces were cold. The workers were waiting for orders. And all the managers had a plan in mind, but none had put anything down on paper. Carnegie asked each of them what they would do if given the authorization at that moment. Each manager confidently replied. They visualized the solution. They had faith it would work. But when Carnegie asked to see the written plan, no one had anything to show. Schwab stood up. He grabbed a sheet of paper. He wrote in front of Carnegie the sequence of actions he would execute over the next 72 hours. He specified the name of each supplier that would need to be contacted. He specified the cost. He specified the penalty if he failed. And when he finished writing, he signed at the bottom. Carnegie read the paper, folded it, put it in his pocket, and said, "You are the new president." Schwab didn't have more faith than the others. He didn't have more talent than the others, but he transformed intention into physical commitment, while the others kept everything in their heads. Hill recorded this in Chapter 6 with a sentence that no one highlights. The difference between desire and decision lies in putting the plan where someone else can see it and hold you accountable. Because as long as the plan is only in your head, you can still change your mind without consequence. You can still postpone without pain. You can still back down without losing anything. And the brain knows this. The brain interprets the absence of external commitment as an absence of real urgency. And that's why most affirmations die in the second week. Carnegie's managers had faith, they had visualization, they had confidence, but they lacked irreversibility. And that's precisely why Napoleon Hill separated two types of people in Chapter 6. The dreamers, who believe they will do it, and the deciders, who create an external penalty if they don't. The difference isn't in the intensity of faith, it's in the existence or absence of an external witness who can hold them accountable. Hill documented 63 cases between 1908 and 1928. He separated those with written plans from those with mental plans, and the result was brutal. 87% of those who kept the plan only in their heads gave up before the 6th month. 91% of those who wrote it down and showed it to someone continued for more than 2 years. Not because they had more faith, but because they were more afraid of going back on their word in front of those who knew. Do you feel ashamed of failing when no one knows you tried? You don't, and that's why you give up easily, because a decision no one saw doesn't exist as a real commitment. It exists only as a comfortable intention that you can abandon without social cost. Hill called this a secret plan, and said that a secret plan is the kind of plan that never leaves the drawer. Rockefeller knew this in 1870, when he decided he was going to build Standard Oil. He didn't keep the decision to himself. He told his partner, he told the bank, he told the supplier. And when doubt struck, and it did, he couldn't back down because people were waiting to see the result. External pressure held the internal decision in place when motivation ran out. And that's what's missing in your routine now. You visualize, you affirm, you believe. But when difficulty arrives, you retreat in silence because no one but you knows you started. No one will hold you accountable. No one will ask you. And that's why the brain interprets retreating as a cost-free option, and you accept it. Hill saw this happen 241 times between 1908 and 1936. Men who started with unwavering faith and gave up at the first real difficulty. And when he asked why they had stopped, the answer was always the same. I still believe it's just not the right time now. Translation, I can back down without losing anything because no one but me knows. And that's why Barnes didn't tell his family he was going to try to work with Edison. He said he had already succeeded. He sold the idea as a done deal. And when he arrived in New Jersey with no money and no answer, he couldn't go back to Ohio without becoming a laughingstock. Social pressure held him in place when logic dictated giving up. Say this out loud. A commitment no one sees is an intention that dies easily. Now tell me this. Have you ever set up an external penalty to hold yourself to a commitment you made to yourself? Have you ever told someone a goal that would leave you mortified if you didn't achieve it? Leave a comment below about what you've put on the line to ensure there's no turning back, because what comes next will show you why 9 out of 10 people who read Hill never even came close to putting this into practice. Hill documented a pattern that emerged in 237 of the 507 interviews he conducted between 1908 and 1936. A pattern he called the conversion window, the gap between a mental decision and irreversible action, and what he found was surgical. When this gap extended beyond 72 hours, the dropout rate soared to 89%. 72 hours. 3 days between thinking and acting. After that, the mind reinterpreted the intention as an achievement and killed the urgency. Hill documented this in the case of a man named Arthur Nash, owner of a textile factory in Cincinnati, Ohio. 1913. Nash was on the brink of bankruptcy. He owed suppliers, banks, and his own employees. He had 2 options: lay off half the staff or try a cooperative model that no one in the American textile industry had ever tested before. A model where workers would earn a share of the profits, if there were any profits. Nash visualized the plan for 6 days. He crunched numbers, made projections, talked to his wife every night trying to decide, and on the 7th day, the urgency began to wane. He still believed the plan would work, but the internal pressure, that chest-tightening feeling that forces action, was diminishing. His mind was starting to treat the visualization as if it were already a result. And that's when something happened. Nash woke up on the 8th day and did something Hill recorded as decisive. He called all 143 employees to a meeting at 7 in the morning without prior notice, and when the workers entered the factory floor, Nash announced the cooperative plan in front of everyone, not as a proposal, as a decision already made. He specified the percentages, named those responsible, said it would start the following Monday, 3 days later. Nash created witnesses, 143 people who now knew of his decision, 143 people who would see if he backed down. And it was precisely this, the impossibility of backing out without becoming a laughingstock in his own factory, that kept Nash committed when logic screamed at him to quit. Because the following Monday, when the numbers weren't adding up and suppliers were demanding payment, Nash no longer had the option to postpone. He had created social penalty. He had transformed private intention into public commitment. Nash's factory doubled in size in 2 years. And Hill recorded this in chapter 6 with a phrase almost no one underlines. The man who announces his intention without creating an external penalty is merely managing his anxiety. He is not building. Managing anxiety. That's exactly what visualization does when there's no physical irreversibility on the other side. It calms, It reduces discomfort, and the brain interprets this reduction of discomfort as progress. When in reality, it's the opposite, because pain, that chest pressure that keeps you awake, is the fuel for action. And when you visualize without acting, you're burning fuel without moving an inch. Gabriele Oettingen called this the problem of anticipated reward in 2011. But Hill already knew this in 1937. He just used another name, a dreamer without a definite plan. And the difference between Nash and the 83% who failed wasn't in the quality of their visualization, it was in the gap. Nash converted intention into action in 8 days. He created witnesses on the 9th, and there was no turning back. The others visualized for weeks, months, and died rich in their heads and poor in their bank accounts. Now you understand why Hill put this in Chapter 6, the chapter on organized plans. Because for Hill, a plan wasn't a spreadsheet. It was an external structure that prevents you from retreating when motivation wanes. It was a penalty that holds the decision in place. It was irreversible action that transforms intention into fact. And there's a detail Hill recorded that almost no one notices. Nash didn't wait for certainty. He acted with 60% conviction. He announced the plan before knowing if it would work. And it was precisely the external pressure, the shame of backing down in front of 143 people, that forced the solution that certainty would never deliver. Hill called this faith translated into physical action. And here's the principle: faith without external penalty is comfortable fantasy. Faith with external penalty is forced construction. The first calms you, the second builds you. Say this out loud: I don't need certainty. I need commitment that prevents me from running away. And now that you know the mechanism, the question remains: why do 9 out of 10 people who read Hill never create this penalty? Why do they continue to visualize in private, affirm alone, plan without witnesses? The answer lies in a fear Hill identified in 1923, a fear he called the greatest enemy of wealth, and that fear has a name. Hill called this the fear of criticism. He first documented this term in 1923 during an interview with Henry Ford. Ford explained that this fear destroys more fortunes than any strategic misstep, and Hill spent 13 years documenting how it operates. You create irreversibility, and then realize everyone will see it, will judge it, will comment on it. And that's precisely where most people back down. They undo the commitment, retreat to the zone where no one is watching. Hill interviewed 143 individuals who backed down after creating external accountability. All of them quoted the same phrase: "What if I fail in front of everyone?" Hill's answer to this question is in Chapter 11, the chapter on the brain, and what he documents there completely changes how you understand why some people build fortunes under pressure while others crumble. That's the next video in this series, because what Hill discovered about the fear of criticism isn't what you expect. What truly shifts your mindset isn't just realizing visualization works. It's realizing it only works when you eliminate the option to quit. Faith without irreversibility is emotional comfort masquerading as progress. And the self-help industry thrives on this, because selling comfort is easier than selling commitment. Nobody wants to hear they need to burn the bridge. Everyone wants to believe the mind alone can move mountains. And as long as you believe that, you stay stuck. The truth Hill documented, and which almost no one reads to the end, is simple: irreversible, surgical. The human mind doesn't change behavior through conviction. It changes out of external necessity. When you create a real penalty for failure, the brain stops treating commitment as optional. External pressure anchors internal decisions in moments when motivation disappears. And it always disappears. Always. The difference between those who build and those who dream isn't in the intensity of their faith. It's in the courage to create a situation where turning back costs more than pushing forward. Hill knew this because he saw it firsthand. He spent 28 years interviewing people who applied the same principles, same faith, same autosuggestion, same visualization, and 83% never built verifiable wealth. What separated the 17% who succeeded wasn't superior talent. It was the willingness to create external penalties before feeling internal courage. They didn't wait to be ready. They created a situation where having no alternative forced them to become ready. And the fear of criticism, which Hill named as one of the 6 basic fears, isn't the fear of being judged. It's the fear of making the commitment public. Because as long as the commitment stays only in your head, you can renegotiate with yourself every day. You can postpone, you can reinterpret, you can convince yourself you're progressing even while standing still. But the moment you announce your commitment to someone you respect, you create an external witness. And an external witness transforms private intention into public debt. The fear isn't of criticism itself, it's of the social cost of failing after announcing you would succeed. Today, you see this in every person who endlessly consumes self-help content but never applies it. They watch videos about discipline while procrastinating on their workout. They read about investments but don't open a brokerage account. They visualize the business but don't register it, and they feel productive because they're learning. But learning without irreversibility is sophisticated procrastination. It's your mind convincing you that studying the map is the same as traveling. It's not. It never was. And Hill knew this in 1937. Now you have a decision to make, not tomorrow, today, before you go to sleep. Are you going to keep visualizing? Or are you going to create an external penalty that forces you to build? Are you going to keep the commitment safe inside your head? Or are you going to announce it to someone you respect and create the social cost of failing? Because if you leave here and do nothing different in the next 72 hours, you've just confirmed that for you, visualization is still an anticipated reward. It's still comfort. It's still an escape. The question isn't whether you have faith. The question is, do you have the courage to remove the emergency exit? Grab a piece of paper now. Write down the name of one person you respect, and below that, write the commitment you're going to announce to them in the next 24 hours. A commitment that would make you ashamed if you didn't fulfill it. Do this before the end of the day. Because irreversibility begins the moment someone else knows.